Hey, this is Dr. West. So this is how I would sort of present this tomorrow, plus the things that you still need to go back and try to fill in. And it's okay if you don't have every single thing done by tomorrow, especially things like the demographics or the future directions. But I at least want you to go back and do the purpose and goals because you've written this part. You just need to go pull it from where you wrote it. You can actually probably even pull it from your abstract. And the same thing with the method. You need to put in what the questions were about. But everything else I sort of have set up for you. I pulled a couple pieces of data. This one I would definitely keep. The first two pie graphs, you don't necessarily have to use those ones, but it is combined for both Winthrop and UNC Charlotte. You at least need to go back through and pick. I never heard from you which ones you wanted to pick. But anyway, when you present tomorrow, you probably just want to do, not that, you probably just want to present, start like a slideshow. You're definitely going to want to introduce your title. Sorry if you see this on here. I don't know how to move that. That's from my recording software. Okay. So you're going to want to introduce your title. You're just going to want to say, my name is, and present your name. And I'm here to talk to you a little bit about this research project, which we titled Myths, Misconceptions, and Metaphorical Mountains. We were interested in what factors keep students from seeking mental health care. So in the purpose and goals, we don't really have a lot of room on here to write some of the background literature, so you're going to want to just say it out loud. You might want to write it on a card somewhere or something and just mention one or two of your studies, things that have looked at, these kinds of issues before, summarize them in a sentence or two and say, additionally, this particular project was based on a pilot study that was done by West and Dieter in 2022. Blah, 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 blah. So specifically the purpose here was to understand what beliefs college students have about mental health counseling. Our hypothesis was that based on the previous data, which I mentioned on that pilot study by West and Dieter, we predicted that students would report beliefs consistent with myths about mental health and mental health counseling. The second goal was to sort of quantify what conditions or issues would prompt students to actually seek mental health care. And again, based on that previous data, it was predicted that students would report being more or less likely to seek mental health counseling, depending on the issue that was being experienced. And then a third goal that's less research and more just sort of mental health advocacy is that we wanted to inform students about mental health resources available to them both on and off campus. And this was done with our debriefing form. So at both Winthrop and at UNC Charlotte, which you'll see in just a moment, we had students from each school. The final form that they would go to, which is typically a debriefing form, also, particularly for this study, included additional information about free or fairly inexpensive mental health counseling resources available, specifically written for each school. So Winthrop had a separate list than UNC Charlotte did. That said, we did distribute an online survey to undergraduate students at both Winthrop and the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. The data is still being collected, so what we are presenting here today is sort of where we were as of the weekend, as far as numbers of participants and things. We are still continuing to collect data throughout the summer, so we'll be adding to this as we get additional data. But the survey contained questions about blah, 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 and that's where you're going to go and put in the statement about the questions. And then we did do some preliminary data analysis for the likelihood of seeking counseling by issue, which is hypothesis 2. And we analyzed that using a repeated measures general linear model. We used IBM's SPSS statistical software, and we set the p-value to 0.05. Again, if you don't have this for tomorrow, you can just sort of generalize it. But if you do, and if you have had time to go through, you can say, as of this moment, we had 74 participants, 50 of them from Winthrop, 24 of them from UNC Charlotte. The average age for each is here. Again, if you haven't had a chance to do this yet, just say something generic like we are still analyzing this demographic data, and we will have these for the end of the week's presentation and before we print our poster. For our preliminary findings, again, we're calling them preliminary simply because we're still collecting data, but out of these 74 participants, again, our first hypothesis was just to look at what myths and misconceptions students have. We did this by having students tell us if these phrases were true or false, and we did give them an option to say whether or not they weren't sure if it was true or false. And as you can see here, we have two of the issues that we have highlighted. The first one says during a counseling session, you'll be prescribed medication as necessary. And as you can see, a significant number of the students, I don't want to say significant, but a large number of the students said either that it was true or that they weren't sure if it was true. Now, the correct answer here is false. You will not be prescribed a medication during a counseling session. Getting a medication requires seeing a different sort of healthcare provider, either a primary care physician or a psychiatrist. A general counselor does not have the license necessary to be able to prescribe medication. So in this case, the answer should have been false. But as you can see, this is one of the myths and misconceptions that's repeatedly thought about counseling sessions, sort of on both ways, right? Talk therapy is different from somebody that's going to prescribe a medication, but each sort of gets confused with the other. And this just highlights the need for us to do a lot more education in general with the community. Second sort of situation, we asked students about whether it was true or false, and again, the answer should be false, but it says that most people with mental health problems can snap out of it if they try hard enough. And this definitely speaks to the stigma sort of part about mental health care. People think that it's somehow a weakness or something like that. Even though we did point blank ask about weakness and everybody did at least say that was false, you word it just slightly differently. If people can snap out of it, and you still have almost 25% of the people saying that it's true or they're not sure if it's true or not. So again, this just speaks to we still need to continue all efforts that have been doing, if not ramp up even more, to sort of bust some of these myths. The second hypothesis was specifically about what kinds of issues students with, or at least students self-reported that they would actually seek out counseling. So they were asked to say on a scale of 0, which is not likely at all, to 5, which is very likely, how likely they would be to go to counseling if they had an issue about, and then we gave them 9 sort of hypothetical issues. We have a few interesting pieces of data here. The first one is these here. So this is like decision making, homesickness, time management. Students were significantly less likely, or they reported that they would be less likely to seek counseling for these issues, even though these are absolutely things that could be discussed with a counselor. Here we found something very interesting about stress. So we asked students about two different kinds of stress, and even the questions were back to back, not stress, but anxiety. The first one was about anxiety that was not related to school, and the second was anxiety that is related to school. And actually there was a significant difference, meaning that students said they would be more likely to seek out mental health care counseling for anxiety if it's not related to school, but those same individuals said they would be less likely to seek out mental health counseling for anxiety if it is related to school. So there's something about this idea of what is causing the anxiety that makes people differ in their opinion about whether or not they would seek out counseling. And then finally, the number one thing that students said they would seek out counseling for was depression, which actually that's very good news for us to hear that students do realize that depression is something you can seek out mental health counseling for, and it was significantly greater than any of the other categories that are here. So now you would need to go and then talk about future directions, and you would need to say, these are the next things that we're going to do. You can include a statement here again that says we're going to continue to collect data and we're going to reanalyze the data. You can say that we would like to have at least 100 participants at both Winthrop and UNC Charlotte, ideally. So again, I left 200 or more. That would be 100 from each school. Again, you can write this out however you want. If you have other things that you want to look at with this, for example, we didn't even talk about the free responses yet, so you could mention in future directions that we're going to look at the free responses and sort of get some stuff there, whatever you want to say. But even just this little bit right here has been about 9 minutes, and I think your goal was to have 10 minutes or so. So this should be about correct. I know I gave you some instructions in there as well, but that's sort of how you want to present this. Hopefully you heard me sort of using some of the language. Again, we'll do a draft of this tomorrow. We can practice a few more times together actually presenting it this way. And then Friday you'll have your actual poster there in front of you. So we do need to sort of get the poster finished up. All right, I hope you have a great night, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.